and I'm a mother of 3 teens and young adults. 2 weeks ago, I was here and expressed my concern about the pot shop called the Cake House in downtown Vista and the other 10 more that are here in our city. Research states that if children grow up in communities where alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana businesses are common, their perception of risk of using those drugs will be muted. I want to express my objections to the cannabis, smoking, vaping, and consumption event being held at the Brangle Terrace Park this weekend for the same reason. The National Safety Council fact sheet has announced that it is, quote, unsafe to be under the influence of cannabis. Intoxicating cannabis products can have a major impact on the safety of our roadways, especially in winter weather, because marijuana use slows reaction time, impacts memory, and impairs skills essential to driving, end quote. Thank you to our sheriff and other law enforcement for aggressively sending out media messages regarding drug-impaired driving and for utilizing freeway signboards stating, quote, drive high, get a DUI. I wonder, will these messages also be clearly posted around the premises of the Brangle Terrace Park? Will there be an aggressive presence of law enforcement checking drivers as they leave the event? I lost my youngest sister at the age of 20 on Highway 78. Words cannot express and describe the loss of a loved one and the staggering effect of a roadway death. It does make me question, does the city of Vista understand the effects of the upcoming cannabis and vaping event? Does the city of Vista care how it might impact our youth and residents? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Brooke Schlang, followed by Junior Vasallo, followed by Hannah Gailey.
Good evening. My name is Brooke Schlingy. I run a home for women and children at Green Oak Ranch in Vista. This home serves 7 women and 6 children, and we provide low rent and assist them as they bridge the gap in their lives so they can move forward to become self-sustaining. Some women have come out of a life of domestic violence, some substance abuse, some both. During their stay at Green Oak Ranch, they set short and long-term goals, and they meet with me weekly and monthly to help see these goals achieved. For one young lady, Chelsea, this looks like coming into the women's house with her 6-year-old without a job or schooling, and now she's a full-time student at Palomar College studying graphic design. I have another young woman, Tatum, who previously resided in the Green Oak Ranch RV park with her baby. She comes out of a life of crime and substance abuse, but she's about to graduate from drug court, and she has recently become a student at Palomar as well. The women's home at Green Oak Ranch is providing stable and very affordable rent, as well as accountability and community to these women who would otherwise be facing very bleak housing options. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Junior Vasallo, followed by Hannah Gailey, followed by Madison on Zoom.
Good evening. My name is Junior Vasallo. I also work at Green Oak Ranch. I am the men's programs director. I'm also a graduate from that place, so I just wanted to share how important it was for the community to be aware that there is places like this. For the men's program, we're a 9-month inpatient program, and it gives people coming off the street of Vista and San Diego County another chance at life. You know, we were self-supporting for 74 years, and now we're kind of on our own. And I just wanted to share with the community how important support is from everyone. And I know homelessness is an issue in our city and county, so just want everyone to know that the doors are open at our place, and we would just encourage support from everyone in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah Gailey, followed by Madison on Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Franklin, Deputy Mayor, and Council. My name is Hannah Gailey, and I'm the Executive Director of Green Oak Ranch Ministries. We have been providing addiction recovery for almost 75 years, funded by a camp and retreat program. In 2024, we lost our lease for 110 acres of land, and with it, $1,360,000 in annual camp and RV park revenue. In place, we have found ourselves in an ongoing, exorbitant lawsuit that threatens to bankrupt our recovery program. We face suits from 5 remaining RV park tenants who have refused assistance, as well as our own landlord for failing to evict these 5 households. In the months to come, Green Oak Ranch Ministries faces difficult decisions regarding funding and the future of our program. Currently, over 60 people are housed through our 9-month addiction recovery program, a 6-month transitional living program, the WIN Home for Women and Children in Need, and an off-site sober living home. These 60 residents are facing imminent homelessness at the hands of 5 RV park tenants who have refused, after 6 months, to comply with an eviction that was not our choice to enforce. Yesterday, Green Oak Ranch Ministries participated in an encampment cleanup on an adjacent parcel. And we were faced firsthand with the reality of homelessness in Vista. We encountered all manner of debris, including bodily fluids, rotting food, weapons, Narcan, and drug paraphernalia. This is the reality of life for the unhoused and the future for many of our recovery residents should Green Oak Ranch Ministries be forced to close. Last year, 33 residents graduated from our 9-month program, going on to be the husbands, friends, sons, and fathers they were designed for. They are gainfully employed, some at the Buena Creek Navigation Center, enrolled in college, starting businesses, and living productive, sober lives. Recovery is an answer to homelessness. It is both preventative and restorative. Recovery is possible, and it is affordable. Green Oak Ranch Ministries charges our residents $750 for a month of program, which covers about 1/2 of the cost of our residential program. The other half, formerly subsidized by our camp and retreat program, is now our greatest need. We are now looking to individuals, organizations, and the city of Vista to meet this need. Would you, our city council, be willing to help 60 residents stay off the streets?
More to come on that important issue. I know we're dedicated to it. Next, we'll go to Madison on Zoom.
Hi, good evening, City Council members. My name is Madison Rapp, and I'm here speaking as a mother of 3 to express my deep concern about the decision to allow public cannabis events in our city. I am deeply troubled by the message this sends to our youth and the potential long-term consequences it could have on their well-being. As we know, cannabis use among young people has been linked to a variety of negative outcomes, including impaired brain development, mental health issues, and an increased risk of addiction. The decision to host public cannabis events, especially those that normalize cannabis consumption in social settings, sends a dangerous message to our youth that it is acceptable or even desirable to use cannabis in public spaces. The Farmers' Cup and events like it may appear to be harmless, but it creates an environment where youth may feel cannabis use is less risky or problematic than it truly is. This is especially concerning when we consider how susceptible youth are to peer pressure and how vulnerable their developing brains are to the effects of cannabis. Cannabis consumption is often marketed in ways that target younger audiences, even indirectly, through social media, branding, and local events. By endorsing these types of events, we may unintentionally contribute to an increase in youth exposure to cannabis culture, which could influence their decisions and behaviors down the line. Our youth deserve to grow up in an environment where they are not exposed to harmful substances that could affect their future potential. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We will now close the opportunity for public comment at this meeting. That's our 5 speakers. That'll take us to our consent calendar. The recommendations for the following consent calendar will be enacted in one motion unless an item is removed from the consent calendar. Any member of the public may remove an item by submitting a request to speak card to the clerk, secretary, staff here at the dais, or by using the raise their hand feature on Zoom, or by pressing *9. Items removed from the consent calendar will be considered immediately following the adoption of the calendar, We have 9 consent items this evening. Deputy Mayor Melendez.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Seeing no discussion, please cast your votes. Is everyone locked in? Okay. There we go. That item passes unanimously, and that will bring us to our first public hearing this evening, our only public hearing regarding a nuisance abatement at 853 Crescent Drive. The public hearing is now open. If there are any members of the public that wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature, by pressing *9, or by submitting a request to speak card. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Our assistant to the city manager, Josh Sino Cruz, will introduce this item, but first I want to thank our assistant to the city manager and our deputy city manager and our code enforcement teams and the sheriff's deputies and the city manager and the city attorney for making it a priority to bring this item quickly, to bring it as a public hearing. We're going to impose, hopefully, significant fines for somebody who's victimizing our community, and there got to be consequences for that. So, Mr. Sina Cruz.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Tonight I'll be presenting on the nuisance abatement hearing for 853 Crescent Drive. So here's a map showing 853 Crescent Drive outlined in red. The assessor's parcel number is 179-070-2600. The property is located about 1,000 feet east of Civic Center Drive and covers approximately a third of an acre. It shares its borders with 3 other properties. This slide displays the current active short-term rental listings as advertised on Airbnb and VRBO. The property has been consistently listed despite the absence of an STR permit. This slide displays the current active short-term rental. Using the city's new auditing program, we've reviewed booking activity since March of last year. The data shows that 106 nights were booked, generating approximately $42,000 in revenue. This confirms the ongoing use of the property as a short-term rental despite multiple enforcement actions. The property has been subject to multiple violations, including operating a short-term rental without a permit, creating disturbances, and failing to obtain a business license. Staff has received over 40 complaints from neighbors regarding excessive noise, parking congestion, and disruptive behavior. In response, notice of violations and citations were issued, which later escalated to cease and desist notifications. The property owner was also formally notified about tonight's public hearing. Even after all this, the property is still being rented out as recent as of last week. And these are examples of photos illustrating the types of parties and gatherings occurring at this short-term rental. On the left, there's a large party in July of 2024 with loud music and large crowds. In the center, there's a blink camera image from one of the neighbors showing a drunk individual in November of 2024 who was attempting to enter their house after attending a reception at 853 Crescent. At the top right, there's a barbecue party in January 2025 that resulted in excessive street parking congestion. And at the bottom right is a party last month with numerous young individuals drinking and hanging out in the street. So this summarizes a sheriff's report related to the property. Since January of last year, the sheriff's department has recorded 17 events, primarily for loud parties, but also for more serious incidents, including reports of grand theft and armed and suspicious individuals. So Code as staff has issued nearly 18,000 in admin citations, none of which has been paid. Staff intends to recover these unpaid fines by placing a lien on the property, which will be collected through the owner's property taxes. And staff recommends that council open, conduct, and close this public hearing, adopt a resolution declaring the property a public nuisance, and authorizing the city manager to abate the nuisance. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
We have 4 speakers on this item I'd like to hear from, starting with Daniel Sirachi, followed by Bill Froelich, then Carrie Michael, and Anna Strawn. Boy, I sure hope the property owner is here to account and explain. Are you the property owner? All right, well, you got some explaining to do. Let's hear what you got to say.
I want to take a moment to personally address the concerns that have been raised regarding the Airbnb to provide clarity in the steps that I've taken to improve the situation. When I first started my Airbnb, I was completely new to the process. I initially completed required paperwork through Airbnb, including submitting my formal information such as my social security number, under the impression that at the end of the year that I would simply report my earnings to the IRS. However, it wasn't until in October of last year that I was made aware that I needed a city license to operate legally in Vista. Once I received that notification, my father, Antonio Sirachi, and I went to the city of Vista to obtain the necessary paperwork. We encountered a complication when we requested the license be in my name so that I would personally be liable for all taxes. The city informed us that was not possible at the time, but said that they would review the matter with their legal team, wanting to ensure everything was handled correctly. I sought legal advice and I was guided closely with city officials to ensure compliance. I engaged back and forth in email correspondence with the city, and after completing the last set of forms, I believed everything was finalized. The cease and desist notices on my door stopped, so I proceeded to run my Airbnb under the impression that all necessary approvals were in place. After hearing what they said, I just want to, off the top of my head, as soon as I got the public nuisance paperwork attached to the door, I started going through all my emails, and I started going through all the letters. They have given me tons of letters that were delivered to that particular address that I don't reside in, and I'm terrible about opening the mail there, and I take full responsibility for that. There was the 2 times now that I had the cease and desist letter attached to a door, which is the 2 times that I started to try to communicate properly. Okay, regarding the noise complaints, I completely acknowledge that when I first started, I had guests who took advantage of my backyard space and hosted parties that got out of control. I understand how frustrating this must be for my neighbors, and I sincerely apologize for those early disturbances. In response, I actively sought advice from experienced Airbnb hosts and implemented several changes to reduce the likelihood of parties, including minimum stay requirement. I stopped allowing single night bookings as they tend to attract partygoers, stronger house rules on my listing description and welcome messages to include strict no party policy, proactive communication.
City Attorney, since he's a respondent here, am I allowed to give him more time? I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to have full opportunity to defend yourself here.
Okay. Proactive communication. I've started addressing potential noise concerns directly with guests before their arrival, ensuring they understand the importance of respecting the neighborhood. Immediate action on complaints. If I receive reports of unauthorized gatherings from neighbors, I take immediate action by contacting the guests if necessary or Airbnb support. I fully understand the impact that noise disturbances can have in a community, and I want to ensure that I remain committed to maintaining peaceful environment. Yeah, I think that's it. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to hear from Mr. Bill Froelich, followed by Carrie Michael, followed by Anna Strawn.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. I'm not 100% on the time frame, but I'm going to say about a month and a half ago, there was an outrageous party held at the property. I know several of the neighbors and myself forewarned the owner or the manager or the son, Daniel, that we could see it starting to happen and nothing takes place. I don't see any effort on the owner's or Daniel, the manager's part to curtail these types of events when they start happening. One piece of advice I got was, well, go ahead and call the sheriff, dude. That's how he responded to our making him aware that the pattern of these giant parties was being repeated, and we would like him to respond. It's been a year approximately since these ordinances came about. Thank you very much for doing that. They're common sense, respectful business ordinance of someone that's conducting a business in a residential neighborhood. If it was conducted in that fashion, it would never have elevated to this point. We, the neighbors, have personally spoke with Daniel several times in the beginning and later on in the operation of this business, how it was disrupting everything. Aside from the huge parties, even the smaller events, as you word them in the ordinance, were causing great disruption after hours and before hours, according to the ordinance. We spoke to him on a very common sense basis, and he did nothing. He has done nothing. I don't expect him to do anything. The whole thing causes a great safety concern. People leaving his house drunk, high on drugs, and I'm talking lots of people driving away in the middle of the night. The streets are active all night long. Loud cars, arguing, fighting, screaming, yelling, yahooing, well into the early morning hours. We text Daniel. I stopped doing it after a while because I know nothing was going to happen any longer, and just started documenting as requested. Please abate the business here that's being run in our residential neighborhood and just running roughshod over the ordinance that you guys so kindly drafted. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie Michael, followed by Anna Strawn.
Hello. I live right next to the party house, the fun house, and it's not very much fun for the neighbors. And Daniel keeps saying he's going to do something about it. It's unlicensed. He's not paying the taxes on it. And if he has 2 cease and desist letters, what is the city? I mean, why is the city not doing something about it? I have 2 dogs, and I had these huge rocks thrown at my dogs. I found them in my yard, and my dogs were afraid to go outside from one of his guests. And I noticed, I think it was yesterday, Daniel was here, I think with one of his brothers and his kids, and they were actually burning firewood in their fire pit. And before, we've had people burning fire in the fire pits, which is against these ordinances. Also, barbecues that aren't gas barbecues are being used. There was a huge party there one day, and there was smoke coming all the way across Crescent Drive up to Orlevo. It's just a nuisance. You know, you never know. Sometimes people come and they're in the house for a while, and they come out after 10 o'clock and start playing basketball and screaming and yelling. And it's really annoying if you're trying to sleep, or you're trying to have some kind of quiet in your house. This party house is just, some of the neighbors want to move out. They're just disgusted with it because it doesn't seem like anything is being done to quiet down the neighborhood. And the parking's horrible. When it says no street parking, well, when there's a party, there's street parking, and I'm trying to pull out of my driveway, and I cannot see down my driveway to my street to even pull out because there's cars there. So it'd be nice if the city would really take charge and do something about this party house. Thank you.
Anna Strawn.
Large wild rave parties have taken place at the fun house. Several foul-mouthed partygoers parked in front of my house talking loudly while waiting to pay for their entry into the rave. The parties range from 75 to 100 people. The thumping, blasting music with DJs starts early, and the police usually come to break it up about 10 p.m. The partygoers disperse to the front of my driveway until the police leave, and then they head back to the party. When they get all clear sign from the people who threw the pay for play party. In the morning, paraphernalia of all sorts, including beer cans, illegal poppers, shot glasses are being left in my yard. There even was a drill left, and at first sight, it looked like a gun. On March 5th, 2024, I wrote my first letter to the mayor and city council regarding the goings-on of 853 Crescent Drive. I want to thank the mayor, the council members, O'Connell, Melendez, Contreras, and Green for all their diligence in following up on this matter. I want to thank Joe Vaca and John Connolly for their concern and help. I also want to thank Joshua Santa Cruz for his continued help and guidance. It has taken 17 months to get here tonight, and we are here after much effort on everyone's part, especially my neighbors' tenacity and the city of Vista's help. It hasn't been an easy 17 months, as it has taken a toll on my health and my neighbors' health. On March 11, 2024, I received a response to my letter from John Connolly. It was at that time I realized that there was only one regulation regarding STRs. It was to get a license and pay TOT taxes. The house at 853 Crescent has never done that, ever. On May 1st, I wrote another letter since the STR at 853 continued to be a nuisance and disturbance. On May 7th, the neighbors and I went to the city council member regarding the rules and regulations and that were drafted and passed by this council, and it was the due diligence of all of you that got those rules and regulations passed, and we are so grateful. And on that night, it was the first night that we realized that Vista was operating.
Thank you. A couple of questions for staff from me. I'm looking at the presentation report here, not the detail, but do we have the dates that these citations were issued?
I don't have the exact dates, but I know they started issuing, the citations started beginning, I believe, in July, with the first NOV starting in, I think it was June.
They are attached as an exhibit to your agenda report, the
Okay, I'll find that.
citations with the dates, beginning August 2024.
Could staff please speak to discussions and contact that they had with the registered owners or the representatives to make them aware of violations?
Yeah, so our code enforcement staff has tried reaching out multiple times, including multiple phone calls, but they were never answered or replied upon. So we did make numerous attempts to reach out to the property owner.
I will also add that staff at different divisions, community development staff, business license staff, including city manager staff, have attempted to make multiple communication attempts with both Daniel and the owner, as Josh mentioned, with minimal success.
So we were sending letters to 853 Crescent?
There's a couple of
That's
addresses
about-
on file, but they were sent to the agent and the owner.
Yeah, and also with code staff reaching out, trying to reach out via phone, and we also have emails trying to reach out to the agent and property owner.
Did we send notices of violation by U.S. mail to the mailing address for the property owner?
Yes, and the latest correspondences were sent certified mail as well.
And do we know what address that was?
Let me see if it's attached to the exhibit. Oops, sorry. So some of the letters were sent to the address at Crescent. The owner's address I don't have in front of me. I don't know if you have it, Clarence. I know our code enforcement manager is here, Clarence Rich. I'm not sure if he has that information on hand.
Mr. Rich, if you have that information, I think it's relevant.
Good evening, Mayor, Council,
Good evening.
City Manager, City Attorney. Can you repeat the question?
Question is, the notices of violation, were they sent by mail to the, whatever the mailing address would be? How do we determine the mailing address for a property? I mean, I know with our property tax bill, we register with the County of San Diego. We may have a different address than the property address itself. Did this property elect a different mailing address?
Yes, it did. Do some research, we were able to find a property owner, previous residence in Oceanside, and notification was sent to Oceanside as well as the property in Vista.
You said it was the owner's previous residence.
Yes, it showed that he previously lived there, but it still seemed to be an active residence.
I see. But we're just not sure if they live there or not.
But we still sent notification to both addresses just to cover our bases.
Right. Well, I don't know if this is a question for you or Mr. Chung, but what does the law require us to do as far as satisfying our necessity to make such notification?
Reasonable notice is what the law requires, and I believe sending it to the property in question, since it's actively being used and there's an agent for it, 853 Crescent would be a proper and reasonable mailing address for the city to use.
Okay. And of course, certainly if the owner had registered with us, we would have had their contact information and been able to better be in contact with them and would have used their telephone number, right?
Yes, Mayor, we do have a telephone number as well as an email, and messages were sent both ways.
Oh, you say both ways. Did you receive?
As far as the email as well as the telephone, but we never received a response back.
Oh, you never received a response to the email?
That's correct.
I see. Okay.
If I may add, I know the owner and the agent came to the front counter to talk to community development to talk about the short-term rental permit process. And that is how we obtained updated information as well.
I see. Do we remember approximately when that was?
Community Development Director Joe Vaca is in attendance. I believe
More
that
important, was it before or after the issuance of the majority of these citations?
probably in between.
In between?
Between, yes.
Okay. I assume by that point, they were, do we know if the citations were discussed?
Yes.
They were discussed at the time that they were here.
They have been aware of the notice violations and citations, yes.
We believe they were aware of them at the time that they were here to discuss the licensure?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's satisfying to me. Thank you, Mr. Rich.
You're welcome.
Maybe one of my colleagues here will have a question for you. Last question before I pass it along, Mr. Rich. I was kind of surprised, given the number of reports I received, that we hadn't issued even more citations than this. If we're able to go back and establish via records that we received from, do we know if was this Airbnb or VRBO or both of them? Do we have a back-end access now to those websites?
Yes, we do.
So we're able to establish that they had rental revenue and the dates that they had rental revenue and violated our law?
We can find that out through our contractor.
Okay, and once we establish that information, would we be able to then add more fines?
I'm not sure at this point, Mayor.
Mr. Chung, if we establish that there was a violation of law, do we have the right to cite for that violation of law if we haven't yet cited for it?
There's a good possibility. We will take a look at that. Knowing the contract we use, they're using estimated. My understanding is they don't have source data from VRBO or Airbnb, so that's my hesitation. If we know for sure, and we have some document proof, complaints from the neighbors and people, photographic evidence or email complaints describing what was happening during those rental times, then I do believe we could go back and cite.
I suppose we could write a letter to the companies and ask them for that information.
We can try. They've notoriously been very
Do we have the right for a compulsory process for a subpoena in that case?
They will respond to a subpoena.
Can we bring a civil action and serve them with a subpoena for that information?
For example, if we end up in a civil action with the owners of this property, we would be issuing subpoenas to.
Are our citations civil? They are, aren't they?
They are.
So wouldn't we have process for a subpoena?
Not.
Discovery?
Our process is civil in the sense that it's not a criminal action.
Right.
But a civil action I'm talking about is if there's a superior court action. So if
I'm saying if we were to pursue this in Superior Court, wouldn't we have the ability to have subpoena?
Yes.
To compel that information?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess the point I'm trying to make for myself is we've got the ability to go back and subpoena, and so we could potentially issue a much greater number of citations, and we would have the right to collect them. And so, my opinion is you're getting off real easy here with this $17,000. And if this continues, then I'm going to ask staff to go back and subpoena, and we're going to find out every time, and it's going to be $2,000 per. So I am very unhappy, very unhappy. You have disrespected our community. You have disrespected the neighbors, people who have invested their life's work to own a home and be able to enjoy it quietly. You've been disrespectful to them. And on behalf of all of the people of Vista who've invested the authority in me to sit up here, I am admonishing you for that. I am extremely unhappy, which is an understatement. I'm pretty upset. Councilmember O'Donnell.
Have we, and kind of in line with what the mayor said, have we contacted Airbnb or VRBO to let them know of the citations or the instances of what was taking place at this property?
Not from code enforcement staff, no.
Through our contractor, I know they are aware that this is being operated as an Airbnb, though.
So my understanding is Airbnb, if we report a property as far as not paying taxes, they will automatically start deducting TOT and start paying the city of Vista. Have we taken that process to contact them yet?
I don't think it's quite as simple as that.
I'm sure it's not, but the way they explained it to me was...
We have inquired about it. There is a fee that they charge to do that. We also pay a company to do that on our behalf, so we're just starting that process with our contractor to collect TOT.
And we have not received any payments from the citations totaling $17,875, and that's been over the course of 14 months?
No, that's...
Yes, the first one I have on file is from August 2024, or 20.
Is that 2024?
Sorry, let me look.
I think that's just since August.
Yes, since August 2024.
August 24? And so it was made mention that they weren't collecting their mail, but I assume that if a citation and or a complaint was filed by the city and you saw a letter from the city, that you would think that you'd want to open it rather immediately to ensure that there were no other issues taking place. So that argument for me really doesn't hold a lot of water. My largest issue with all of this is, not only is it disrespectful to the community in our city, it is a waste of public resources to continuously have to send our deputies to this home. And the nuisance and the party and just the parking, I'm sure, and our code enforcement. There are much better things, I wouldn't say better, but there are many other important things that they could be out there doing, and this should not be one of them. And the fact that this has taken place over the course of 14 months or longer, and we've heard from all of the neighbors, is very disappointing, and I am upset about it as well. I'd be curious to know, and I'm not asking for an answer on this, but how many have been multiple bookings of people that have booked there through a party, then came back? When was this being addressed with guests? And if it was being addressed with guests, why, if the knowledge was out there, has there been no communication with the city regarding $18,000 in citations? None of this is okay. And so to know that people in our community have spent their hard-earned money to try and invest in property and live in this community, and we are doing everything we can. We purposely created the SRO laws to uphold all of to try and stop all of the stuff that's happening at this property. And forgive me because I'm very upset trying to speak right now, but this is not okay. So I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing and adopt staff recommendation to move forward with making this property a nuisance. And those are all my comments for right now.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you, Mayor. I would go ahead and second that motion. I am extremely disturbed, as the neighbors are, at the behavior that's occurred on this property. We really should be defending our neighbors' rights to peaceful enjoyment in their homes. And this level of disturbance is, it's really the reason why I championed and brought forward the short-term rental policy. And this is just one neighborhood, right? But we have to be enforcing our policies if they're going to mean anything. And I do not want this business to operate any further. I completely agree. It's a waste of resources. It has not operated in good faith. Our staff is very diligent and very helpful and accommodating at walking business owners through sometimes very difficult process of paperwork and applying for licenses. And I do believe that we've done everything that we could to obtain compliance from this owner. And I would have expected that the owner would have come to this meeting prepared and having done everything. And am I to be clear in my understanding that they still do not have a proper short-term rental license?
That is correct.
And that's not because we've withheld it from them. They haven't completed the application, or what? Do we have any understanding as to why they haven't completed it?
We won't issue them an STR license at this point based on all their prior actions. So, so yes, it was at the city attorney's direction not to issue the license.
And at what point in all of these notices and all of these complaints did they attempt to come to compliance?
They did, after the first cease and desist letter was mailed to them, they did come to City Hall. I do know they responded to that. So staff can answer the rest of that, but I do know that they did come in after receiving the first cease and desist letter.
And at what point, City Attorney, did you make the ruling that you would not advise for us to provide a license to them?
It was an ongoing kind of, so this is when the cease and desist letters were going out and deciding, kind of hypothetically what would happen if they did, and based on the outstanding administrative citations, their basically intentional disregard for the city rules, it was basically around that time.
I completely agree with your ruling. I think it's important for the community to know. Our city attorney sits here and serves the public in an effort to prevent great liability from coming upon the city. And so, if this is the direction of our city attorney, and staff has made every single effort to bring the property owner into compliance, and the neighbors are continuing to suffer, then now it is time for our council to act. So I completely support this item, and I would, again, second the motion to close the public hearing and consider this a nuisance.
Councilmember Contreras.
Yeah, I am actually very pleased, Mayor Franklin, bringing, some of the comments that you did regarding TOT that's still owed. I would really like to see what the cost benefit would be to pursue the TOT. I'm assuming, obviously we can only go back to when that was enacted at the city level. However, I think it's something that we need to look at. I don't like, being in the hole. We have a lot of staff hours that have been wasted. We have a long list of, on the sheriff's report, time that was wasted. And I'm curious if there were any arrests that ended up happening, and if these are the types of crimes that would fall under crimes against society. Just kind of, we can, have that conversation outside, but I am curious about that. But I do think that we should be collecting all the money owed. There's no justification for this type of action. The other thing is, it seems like this house has been a cash cow, right, for the person operating it. And when you're going to conduct a business, it's critical that you conduct a business. There are laws and stipulations, and they vary from place to place, which, can make it difficult sometimes to understand what the business framework is in a particular city. But understanding that there has been ample attempts, not only from the city side, but also from your neighbors, to let you know that this behavior and this type of activity is just not okay. And I'm sorry that, to you neighbors, that you've had to go through so much. Your street is a small street, right? It's an area that has more rural characteristics, and I'm sure that that's why you chose to live there, and that's why you've chose to be there for all these years. So I do apologize that it's taken such a long time, but we have been at the council level, thanks to Deputy Mayor spearheading this STR process. We've been trying to address it, and it's come to this conclusion. However, it seems that there's still more that the council is asking of our staff to do at this point to rectify this problem. And so that's all I have to say. I really want to thank city staff. I know that these issues are not easy to deal with. But I do thank you for your due diligence, and I thank the community for reaching out and being vocal. I remember you coming to council and utilizing the public comment, and please know that we want to hear from the community when there are these types of issues, because this is, 100,000 people, 19 square miles, and we can't be everywhere at once. But we want to know from anybody else who's having these types of issues, because the quality of life is paramount to this council. We want to ensure that you all have a good quality of life. So thank you so much to staff. I look forward to seeing whatever we can do to collect the money that's still owed to the city.
Councilmember Fox.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I just wanted to thank all the community members for coming forward, and all the neighbors that have been having to deal with this situation. I know it was Joe Green who was previously the council member in this seat, and so you had probably been speaking with him for a little while. But I just wanted to be here to show my support and let the District 2 residents know that if something like this happens in the future, that you can reach out to me, and I would like to help you through something like this. I want to make sure that you know that I do have your backs on these kinds of things. So that's all I have to say, because I haven't been on here very long, so I haven't been hearing all the complaints and everything that I'm sure everyone else has. But I just want to show my solidarity with you and let you know that I have your support in the future for these kinds of things.
Before we vote on this, I just want to let you know that it might be a really good idea for you to just go ahead and sell this property, because there's a lot more that we could come after you for if we get motivated. I don't want to hear any more complaints from the neighbors. So you've put us to the test here. You're disingenuous and dishonest in implying that you didn't know. You knew. You knew you were causing this problem. You ignored the neighbors. You didn't have respect for other human beings in society. You treated other people with disregard for their property and their concerns so that you could make a profit. You used a greed motive to mistreat other people. It's one of the most disgusting things that I've seen in a long time. I'm very, very disgusted by your behavior. And what I would say is there's a lot more that if we get anxious to bring financial penalties against you in a court, you're going to really regret that you continue to attract our ire. So you need to solve the problem immediately come into compliance with our law. You do not have a license to rent this property out short term. That means 30 days or less. You have the right to rent it out permanently. But if I were you, I'd get free and clear of this property as soon as you could so that the city of Vista isn't thinking about you anymore. Because one more complaint, and I'm telling you what, I mean, we are really unhappy, and I'm holding my language back, but I am seriously, seriously bothered. So, Councilmember O'Donnell.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to delay this vote. What time is the noise ordinance for City of Vista? 10 p.m. So I just pulled up this house on Airbnb, and 9 o'clock for the ordinance? Okay. So the strongly worded statement is, would like music to stop by 10 p.m. And so just seeing that is not something that is indicative of somebody who's actively trying to stop loud parties. 2 nights at this property, if we were to book it at the end of this month, would cost $1,053. So just to add a third person to direct staff, if this continues, to the extent possible of the law, to collect any taxes associated with this property, if we continue to receive these type of complaints and it does not cease, then please move forward with that. And those are all my comments for tonight.
And to issue a $2,000 fine for every day that we have not yet issued a $2,000 fine according to law. I imagine $2,000 per day, once we get the records from Airbnb and Verbo, would add up to a very substantial amount of money, maybe 6 figures. And I think we're deadly serious about pursuing that. So, like I say, I would figure out how to get away from this neighborhood and let these people be in peace. That's just my recommendation to you. But if you continue to make us unhappy, we will pursue that. So don't let us hear about this from these neighbors one more time. You get over there and write them a letter of apology and make it right with them on your way out the door. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Okay, that's going to bring us to our next item. And thank you to the residents who patiently suffered with this. And I can see the emotion in your faces. And I'm so sorry to you that you had to deal with this for the last year plus. On behalf of the whole council and the city, I apologize to you. But I also thank our good staff for their work on this. Okay, it's going to bring us to first of three discussion items this evening. Our first item is the Avo Theater Advisory Stakeholder Committee recommendation. If there are any members of the public that wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature by pressing *9 or submitting a request to speak card. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. We're going to take about a 2-minute break here while folks who are up on their feet find their way out of the chamber. We're going to have a happier discussion. Okay. Now that we've got the chamber back to calm, let's proceed. Our Economic Development Director, Larry Voppel, will provide the staff report. If any member of the public wants to speak on this, they may indicate so by submitting a request to speak card by pressing *9 or using the raise their hand feature on Zoom at this time. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Mr. Voppel.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Franklin and members of the City Council. Mr. Mike Pacheco is with me as well tonight. Tonight, we will provide a report on the work of the AVO Theater Advisory Committee. And the purpose of that committee was to investigate, discuss, and recommend to the City Council ways to increase the use of the AVO Playhouse Theater located at 303 Main Street as an economic and cultural resource for the City of Vista. The committee was tasked to perform public outreach, solicit public input, and facilitate stakeholder discussions around increasing opportunities at the AVO. We do want to take this opportunity to thank our committee members for their time and energy towards this effort. Also, several staff members supported the committee's work. So the work of the committee included interviews of 3 owners, operators of similar theaters located in Fallbrook and Oceanside. They toured the AVO to study the existing conditions. Through staff, we created a list of deferred maintenance items, and we also created a list of upgrades needed to turn the AVO into a state-of-the-art live entertainment venue. And we utilized Moonlight staff and recreation staff for that. And then we reviewed this list and formed a recommendation to the City Council. That committee recommendation has several parts. First, they recommend that the city perform the deferred maintenance and upgrades, the estimated cost of which is $1.3 million. It is believed that these upgrades and deferred maintenance items will transform the AVO Theater into a modern, attractive, multi-use event theater destination to draw people to downtown Vista. A key word there is multi-use. They didn't focus on any one particular use. They see an opportunity for theater, youth theater, music, comedy, live audience, podcasts, recordings, TED Talks, those types of things. And with the upgrades, we would be able to accommodate all of those. Increase the number of rentals and provide a venue for local talent. Incentivize the use of the AVO Theater in the near term to increase awareness and rental opportunities. And allocate funding in the budget, fund balance, and grants to perform these maintenance and upgrades. And then hire staff to promote, book, and manage the AVO Theater. Public Works and Moonlight staff have prepared the estimates for the deferred maintenance items and the upgrades to the seating, sound, video, and lighting systems. And this list is attached to the staff report. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, we do have a couple of public speakers here. We'll start with Jacob Friedrichs, and then we'll go to Rachel Beld, who I think is with us on Zoom.
Good evening, Mayor Franklin, council members, and fellow people of the community. My name is Jacob Fredericks, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you all today. I was born and raised in Vista, and I'm involved in local photo, video, and music productions. I'm here today to discuss the future of the AVO and cost-effective and community-oriented direction I think should be pursued. Despite what I've been hearing in past meetings regarding the AVO, I do not believe that what the AVO needs is costly renovations and further postponement of operations. Similarly to the La Paloma Theater in Encinitas, the AVO's vintage and retro features are a source of appeal, especially surrounded by new developments that many long-term residents have still yet to identify with. Although investments could certainly be made into the AVO, why not first start by encouraging a variety of relatively simple events to test some concepts that can draw community members to the AVO as it stands today? After touring the facility this past weekend, I believe the AVO is in a perfectly functional state, and the issue is not new carpet or plaster, but rather the lack of a strategic operational plan centered around a low-cost community engagement. The goal of the AVO should be becoming the lightning rod of downtown Vista, attracting visitors from the community and a broader North County to increase downtown patronage through the arts and entertainment. There are many people in Vista bringing the community together through music, art, and entertainment with little money or support from the city. These local acts can be utilized immediately to support a flourishing relationship between arts and business. From Battle of the Bands, poetry slams, film festivals, and more, the potential for cost-effective sources of community engagement are endless. The AVO can serve all members of the community, from family nights during the week to attract kids and adults during the slower hours, to youth nights on the weekends to give teens and adolescents a safer place to spend Friday and Saturday nights. The AVO has the potential to be the hub of Vista's downtown entertainment, and I believe this should be completed not with blank checks, but rather with community engagement and cost-effective event production. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Great comments. Rachel Bell on Zoom.
Hello, Mayor and members of the City Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rachel, how are you?
Okay. Hi. I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this item forward, Mr. Voppel and the AVO committee. My name is Rachel Beld. I'm the president and CEO of the Vista Chamber of Commerce, and I'm calling in this evening to express the Chamber's support of renovating and investing in the AVO as an economic development engine in our downtown. The AVO is an incredibly special place and has the ability to attract all different kinds of acts and customers and folks from within our community and the surrounding area. I agree with the previous speaker who talked about all of the ways that the AVO could be creatively utilized, but do believe that the investment of just over that $1 million would be well spent to renovate and improve the AVO and make it a more attractive space. On a personal note, my previous role at the City of Vista, I actually I served in a role to book the AVO, and that was 20 years ago. And it was difficult to do then. And so there's definitely a need for those improvements. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to especially our committee, our AVO committee members. I really appreciate community members participating in that groundwork, right, to help us move things along. This is a long-standing public facility, and I remember having grown up here in Vista, doing plays in the AVO myself and participating in youth theater. I think it is a beautiful facility, even with its many years of wear and tear. But I think that the recommendations that have come forth from the committee of top-level material, physical improvements that we could make to the facility are really well thought out. We definitely want to improve the facility. We have peeling walls, we have insufficient technology, we have ADA issues, we have termite damage. So there's a lot that we need to do in order to make sure that it's for the long term that this facility is going to be working well and providing well for the community. But I really do agree with the speakers tonight who shared that the AVO, as it is right now, can still be a space for the community. And we do not have to wait for these repairs to happen in order to bring more folks in. One of the things I'm seeing in the recommendations from the committee, and I really want to highlight this and focus on this for my comments tonight, is to increase the number of rentals to the AVO. If we're able to do that, if we're able to get more talent in the AVO, then that is going to really be the action, right, that facilitates more patronage in our downtown businesses in general. We want to get folks out on, a Wednesday night, going to see a local comedy bit. We want to get folks, on an usually unbooked Sunday matinee to come hear some local musicians play. It doesn't always have to be a big crowd. I think that we have a real alternative community here in Vista and North County. We have people who are talented, that have a small audience, that they just need a venue. And since this is a public facility, I really believe it should be more accessible in terms of cost. So perhaps one of the reasons why we're struggling to book folks at the AVO is because the costs are not reflecting the value of the facility, right? Maybe if we make it super pretty, people will want to book with us more. But I do think that the cost, the fee schedule is very prohibitive to a lot of our up-and-coming artists. So once again, and this is something that I've brought up before, I want us to reevaluate our policies and our programs, our fee schedules, and our calendaring for the AVO, because I believe that the programs and the policies are the greatest prohibitions to getting folks in the AVO and making it a more active space. In addition to the material improvements that we need to make there, I would love to hear a little bit more from the committee of ways that we can improve the fee schedule so that your average local musician is able to afford it a little bit more. I don't know if staff, you would have any kind of preliminary thoughts on improvements that we could make to the fee schedule. I know it's something we regularly look at with all of our facilities, but this is a unique asset. So are there any recommendations that we might be able to move forward with?
Yes, great comment, Deputy Mayor. The initial thought of the committee and staff was that the council directed some year-end fund balance to promote more activity and events in downtown, and that we could use some of those funds to reduce the fees on average. And this doesn't include all the fees, but the roundabout number for a nonprofit to rent the facility for one night is about $1,200. So you're already at about $4 a ticket just to cover the cost, right? So if we could use some of that money that you basically set aside to incentivize downtown events to help offset that for a year or so, that could be one way to
Yep, I appreciate that suggestion, right? I think that when we see a $1.3 million price tag for these improvements, I'm looking at the list and I'm thinking for myself, okay, what's the most urgent improvement that we need to make? Because we would love to adopt all of them here tonight, but we haven't identified a funding source for that. And then when it comes to reducing fees, are we really insistent on the fees staying the same to our own detriment when we could, radically reduce the fees and remove these prohibitions and get more people into the door to be an economic engine to our downtown? So maybe I'd like to put that to my council a little bit, and maybe we can workshop together here, working with staff, trying to understand what are the real costs to run the facility, and then beyond those real costs to run the facility, can we just allow more public access? And that's what I would like to see. I know that our fees have been established for a reason, but I would like to maybe see a deeper dive and a breakdown of the true costs to run the facilities and how we can make changes to the fee schedule to reflect those true costs, yet also reduce the burden on the talent that really is looking for a venue. And beyond that, I do appreciate the recommendations of the committee in terms of the improvements that we need to make. That was the entire point of having the committee come together, is to really get eyes on the AVO, because it was a space that had just been kind of sitting there, right, needing those generational improvements, and now we have a committee that's really stewarding that, and I think that that's really important. And I want to go, I would love to go back to the committee and empower them to bring us recommendations in terms of programming, right? So we have the kind of the hard material improvements that we need to make the facility, and then we have the policies and the programming of how we utilize the facility. And in that regard, I would say that the fees are way, way, way too high. Topic, right? I really appreciate the public speakers tonight. Everybody cares about the AVO, and I just want to make it really clear that I want to make it as accessible as possible to folks, because we have a lot of talent in our community, and the history of theater is so powerful, and the future of theater is even more powerful with what we're capable of doing with that venue. So I hope my council can join us, and maybe we can reevaluate some of these fees. Thanks.
Councilmember Contreras.
Yeah, I too want to say thank you so much for everybody involved, in the public. You don't have to give us any of your time, and you have volunteered to do that because you really care. And so I know I've been elated to see the type of public involvement that we've had recently discussing the AVO and even looking at the downtown. I have a question regarding the structure of this committee. So is this committee, is it done or is it continuing?
That's up to the city manager.
Everyone's looking at me. The committee was formed to make a recommendation on the AVO for its future use. So we feel like the recommendation has been made and they've done their work. But if the council wants them to do some additional work, as Deputy Mayor mentioned, maybe looking at some of the programming, we can always take back additional questions to them. But the recommendation in terms of the facility itself has been made.
And is this also a Brown Act committee?
I don't believe so, no. There's no council member on it.
Okay, if there was a council member on it, then it becomes a Brown Act committee?
Not necessarily, but I would always advise you to have it as a Brown Act committee if there's a city council member on it, just for transparency.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if, because this was kind of new in our discussions of committees, right? This is newer for us as a council. Prior to this majority on the council, there wasn't seemingly a big appetite to have a lot of committees. But we've ventured down that path. And I'm curious to see if there would be appetite for a council liaison. I think Deputy Mayor would be great because this is something that she really wanted to move forward and spearheaded. But I'll leave that up to my council to decide. I completely agree with the programming. I think I'm actually a little annoyed and upset to have to be saying this for maybe the third or fourth time, that I'm really sick of these rates. I'm sick of seeing a closed AVO. It doesn't matter if we're charging $1,200 and no one ever rents it, then we're really losing out. I would rather have take one of those zeros off and be able to have community in that space. So this is a question for our staff. When we discussed our fee schedule, I talked about decoupling this from Club M and the Moonlight. Has that occurred?
Yes, we, as you recall, last year presented our policies and fees, and it was just an oversight that we had kept the Club M written in there with the AVO. We no longer do Club M anymore, so it's really just those are the fees for the AVO rentals.
So if I were to look it up right now, would it be corrected? Or would it would be corrected?
Yeah, we, from the action we took from that last council meeting, because your actions had caught that, we had wrote the red lines after that.
Okay. I really think that the recommendation is incomplete because there's this programming side. I really appreciate the recommendations about the facility, and I'm curious to see, if, like for instance, if we wanted to be able to have more events there, what would be the critical components? And I think about an event, obviously the sound has to be good, the lighting has to be good, the video has to be good. For God's sakes, the alarm system has to be good. The fact that that's on here, right? But then, it's simple to say that, but understanding that we also need to do a replacement, of all these other things, including the roof. So that's where I would like to also get a little bit more information. I don't know if that comes from staff. I don't know if that comes from the committee, but I would want to know how we could create a phased approach where we can modernize this. If we may not have a ton of money right now, okay? sales tax, I don't know if you looked at our recent workshop on the 6th, but sales tax are flat, could be decreasing. That means that we're not making as much money, which means that we have less money to cover all the things that we need to do as a city. However, if we were to look at, putting somewhere around $300,000 a year for the next 5 years, that would get us to about $1.5 million. And I think that we would be able to chip away at this. And if at the same time we're able to increase the utilization of the AVO, that $300,000, maybe it's not, a giant hole that we're digging for the city, because we also want to try and generate some revenue. Sales tax being a part of that, right? If we could continue to have more economic activity in our downtown that spills over into the city, then, that could, in fact, help with this issue. I know certainly it's going to help our businesses downtown. I am curious to see, too, if part of the programming for lower fees could be on those days that our downtown really needs help. So could we have lower fees on a Monday through Thursday schedule, and then have higher premium fees on a Friday and Saturday, and then potentially have a really low-cost day on Sunday for Family Day? Because that's what I'm hearing, that families also want to be able to enjoy the AVO. Can we, do something for families there, right? I think all these things need to be, investigated a little bit more. And I agree with Deputy Mayor about one of the biggest points in this recommendation is that increased number of rentals and provide a venue for local talent. I follow a band that finally got, some practice space, and they're doing it at Guadalupe Brewery, right? Very popular band locally. So I know that it is really difficult for our local talent to have any kind of venue. And I know that if we as a city can foster that type of ecosystem and environment with the city assets that we have that are underperforming, that we could really create something amazing here in Vista. So I agree with utilizing some of the funding that we've appropriated to make this happen. I don't know what that looks like. Obviously, it would take a longer discussion with more information in front of me. But these are some of the recommendations that I have, because at the nonprofit level, that's the lowest number, that's the lowest cost, right, to operate. So that $1,200 is the lowest cost for one night, and that is absolutely cost prohibitive. So, I'm curious too, a little bit more about the nonprofit structure, because if there's, bands or, comedy troupe or whatever that wants to maybe utilize a lower rate, how does that complicate it if they have to be a nonprofit, right? I don't think that we should only be looking at a low tier for nonprofit. I really think that we should consider looking at a day-to-day model and really lowering the fees for some of the days that we're not having high enough foot traffic in our downtown. And I know, Larry, you have all this great data. I think utilizing that data to see the unique visitors and look at some of those days that we have less folks in the downtown, we could overlay that with a potential fee structure. So in any case, I really like that we're having this conversation. I think that, I don't want to take more of the committee's time, but if there is an appetite to respond to some of the comments and questions and suggestions that the council is providing at this time, I completely empower you to continue on this committee until we actually see something materially at the AVO that's different. I would love for this committee to culminate in an actual end where it's maybe the first performance at the AVO, right? And we can all be there and we can celebrate as a city, as a committee, with whoever has that first performance that comes out of these recommendations. But like I said, I don't want to take more of your time. So if this is something that you want to continue, just know that you have my complete support, and I'll do whatever I can at this council level to ensure that you are able to provide all the talent and wisdom that you have to make the city better and to really have a functioning civic space at the AVO. That's all my comments at this time. Thank you.
Councilmember Fox.
Thank you for the presentation. This is, and for all the committee members who took the time to be on this. I'm very grateful for all the time you put into this and to give back to our community and make Vista an awesome place to live. I personally, obviously, really don't like seeing two of the most eye-catching, visually attractive buildings in our downtown area sitting empty, right? So, especially when they could be draws into our downtown, and the AVO is obviously one of them. So, so that's why I think it's so important that we have this conversation and try to think of what solutions we can do to actually get that thing utilized. First question I had was, I did hear the nonprofit rate, but could you lay out kind of the cost, the cost for nonprofits, for-profits, individuals?
Absolutely. So they're broken down into two different categories as far as like the rates. So there's a non-performance day, so for rehearsals, and then there's the performance day. The three different groups, we have the nonprofits for Vista organizations, then it's non-residents, and then the for-profit organizations. So those three categories. So this is similar to other facilities that are big, like long-time rental places, like for weddings, like the Adobe, for Moonlight. We can't just have a 1 hour rental and someone would have like a 1 hour birthday party and then it would block out a whole show, a whole event. So it's a 10-hour minimum. So for the 10-hour minimum on a performance day, a nonprofit Vista organization would be $780. And that would come with, we have ticket sales, but there's a little tack on for that. If you are using our ticket system, it's $1 extra per processing fee. There's some of the staff included in the rental, but then there's tack on fees for additional staff, depending on what level of set in, similar to Moonlight too, just technical directors, extra hours for that staff. So I think that was a good example of this is what a typical, show, and they're doing everything, tickets, they're in full setups. That could be additional hours. So an additional hourly rate past the 10-hour rate is $120 for that nonprofit Vista organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about for the for-profit and, yeah, that's really the one that I think is important.
Yeah. So for that group, for the for-profit organizations, for its 10 hours would be $1,555. And then typical charges for staff, house staff could be 15 to 25, technical personnel 25 to 50. There's a couple other tack-ons, like a light rehang is $900. Ticket printing, $75 for a single event, $20 for each, performance afterwards.
Okay. And there's no current schedule for a Vista for-profit. So because a lot of people are going to be, if we're talking about doing concerts or something like that, would probably be individuals, not, necessarily nonprofit organizations. So if they were to try to rent the event and sell tickets for it, it would be on the for-profit, but there's no for-profit Vista, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. This is just my business brain working, but I heard staff time is probably one of the big ones. I'm assuming cleaning fees and some of that, but what are some of the major variable costs, like the costs that we have only if we have someone in there that to operate the facility? So not the cost of the building, general repairs, things like that you have to pay whether someone's in there or not, but only if there was someone in there, like the variable costs.
Yeah, so as far as like how we base our fees, like RCS just in general, there's a whole cost recovery model. I mean, we have to have all these other external services that we're paying for. We're paying for like fire and IT and other admin charges, that it's not just the person that's working that day at the event. There's public works, because there's facility maintenance that gets also kind of factored into all of our like fee analysis. The last time they did this, an actual fee study was 25 years ago. And the way that process worked was they did community input. So it's a very more thorough process compared to normal just fees that the city's charging, because there's so much community involvement with that kind of a process. So I kind of giving a non-answer right here, but there really is more to how RCS fees are kind of established across the board.
And I'm sure with it being done 25 years ago, if we were to do it again today, I'm sure the price would go down, right?
Right, yeah, good point. Well, I would say there's been escalators, to your point, but the philosophy and how those fees have always been charged, that philosophy was set 25 years ago, but just knowing we don't just calculate it based off of 3 people that are working that day and then the cleaning fee. There's the whole department has these fee policies throughout every facility.
And that's something as a business owner, one of the things we do is when we're setting pricing, a lot of times what you're looking at is, what are our variable costs? The fixed costs, the things you have to pay either way. You want to make sure every dollar you get above the variable costs contribute to those fixed costs. So that's basically one of the things where, if you don't have anyone in there, you still have to pay the fixed costs, and you end up with these really large subsidies. And in a business, you don't get subsidies, right? So you just go away. But that's something that is really interesting to me, is to look at some of those schedules and see if there's anything I could do to help on some of those. But other than that, out of these repairs that were on the list, are some of these necessary for safety reasons? Roofs falling on people's heads, things like that.
No,
Okay.
they're not. There's no life safety concerns at the AVO currently. So all of these would be. The committee felt like they were necessary in order to increase the number of rentals. So there's this catch-22, right? Right now, if a band wanted to rent it, they got to bring their own sound system, their own lighting system, which raises the cost of them to go there. If we had that included, then either that's absorbed into a rental fee, or just it allows for more uses of the property.
Yeah. I mean, and I could also see it the other way around, where if they already have the equipment and then they don't have to pay extra rental fee for it, it could make it more affordable. But so I understand there's always the juggling, right, that you have to do with these kinds of things. I know that's one of the reasons why, I think government has a really hard time with these types of facilities. The same kind of conversation we have at the Wave, which was, that we're not necessarily the best at running facilities that you typically in the private sector have a profit motive, and we have to actually figure out how to make things run efficiently and everything. And so, have there been any operators that have come to us with interest in helping us with booking and running the facility?
Yes, a bit of history prior to the COVID pandemic. The city had engaged into an agreement to allow a developer an exclusive look at it. And then, of course, COVID happened, and that got extended a couple times. But eventually, we would not extend it any further, and they walked away. But I believe today, in fact, there was a letter sent, you would have received it late this afternoon, from a development group who would be interested in doing, they're recommending that the city do an RFP process. And I think when we first set up the committee, we also had public speakers, and that was something that they recommended as well, is let's partner with the private sector who can bring some funds to the table, make these improvements immediately, and then recapture some money through venues.
Right. And I think it's always important to kind of balance that against the public good. This is a city facility, and we want to make sure that whatever happens with it, that it's a benefit to whatever we do from here on improves it for the community, not the other way around. So, I mean, that would be something that I'd be interested at least hearing. I know we're doing something like a request for information rather than RFP for other projects. Is that something we could potentially seek, just to open our options, see what people kind of are thinking about it while we kind of pursue some of these repairs and things that I'm sure that they'll want to do anyway, while we're in the process of finding a funding source.
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't cost us any time. Like, nothing has to sit in abeyance while we pursue that route. It's something we could do concurrently.
Okay. I mean, I think that's something that I would be interested in. I'm not sure if my council has any appetite for it, but I think that's all my questions for now. Thank you for putting up with all the grilling.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mike, Larry. Thank you for your work on this. To the committee, thank you so much for all your work on this as well. I know this has been a long discussion, not tonight, but just over the course of time. It's been brought up many times. You had mentioned a previous developer, and I just want to know how much they were willing to invest at that time, or what their thoughts were on what they would need to invest to renovate the property to satisfaction.
Yeah, so I would classify that as a remodel and an expansion. That was not a renovation, but it was to the tune of about $6 million.
Yeah, and I asked that because I knew that number, and I see 1.3 here, and it's just drastically different. So I appreciate that. To the gentleman that made the comment about the retro features, I could not agree with you more. I would hate to see the marquee sign or the tower be replaced. It's on here. It says needs to be replaced. Is that just a?
Yeah, that wouldn't. It's not a tear down and swap out with something else, but the whole interior workings of that thing has been completely destroyed.
So it needs to be renovated.
Yes.
Into an estate, or yeah.
And
or
we can't
restored, I should say.
And the light bulbs no longer are manufactured
I mean,
in
we could,
California.
yeah, I think that we could find more energy efficient light bulbs at this point for that signage. So I would just hate to see those two items though be replaced or changed, because I think that actually brings a lot of character and would draw more people in.
Excuse me, I think we did recommend the marquee instead of putting up the letters
digital?
being digital, but that's.
I can be open to it, Larry, but you have to convince me.
It'll look classic too. You can actually get
You
these.
can make it look classic.
It'll look like the exact same kind of footprint. And then the LED, fluorescent that burnt out, as Larry described, would be LED, but it would look exactly like it used to before. But it's mostly just like the whole facade is just like water intrusion. So that's more of a construction interior.
Yeah, it's just an iconic shot, especially when you have the clock in there and you're looking down Main Street. It's beautiful, so I would hate to see it change.
Yeah.
One of my questions for you is, how many inquiries do we get a year on renting out the AVO? And how many people say no once they find out the price tag?
Yeah, good question. I could get back to you on that.
Please, and the reason I ask that is because I actually agree with the Deputy Mayor and my colleague that we need to make it accessible to bring in local talent, but we are also not professional bookers. And so my large concern is if we do all these renovations, we still may have to subsidize a large portion moving forward of bringing people in. So I would actually like those numbers. I could be supportive of an RFP consideration. I'm not saying I'd be supportive of actually executing one, but to get an idea of what somebody can bring to the table, I could be supportive of. But you know, it does need to be maintained for the community at all costs. So regardless of if we were to enter into any partnership, there has to be accessibility to the community. It's the same conversation we had a couple weeks ago about the wave, and I know that we didn't put out for an RFP, but we cannot lose access for the people that we're trying to do this for. And just, I know, actually I don't know because I've never done it, but I know people in the industry how extremely challenging it is to be a booking agent or be someone that tries to host these facilities. I look at the Belly Up and I don't ever want to compare the two locations because they are so vastly different, but that place is never empty, right? I mean, they are booked every single night of the year. And so if we can create a space that would draw in, even if it's for smaller bands or just local bands or anybody, not just bands, but any artists or whatever we're trying to accomplish in that, I think it would be tremendously beneficial, not just to those artists that are local, but to our community as a whole, and bring more people downtown that otherwise might not come here and make it a destination. I do worry about, again, subsidizing over the course of time and what that cost might look like. I like the idea, though, of utilizing some of the money that we had set aside to see if we can generate more business there by offsetting the cost through some of that funding. So I definitely would be open to that. You know, as far as hiring someone to become the person that does all of the booking for this and all of that, you know, last week we talked about potentially doing a hiring freeze here in the upcoming months, and so to hire another staff person on top of this, not saying it wouldn't be beneficial, I just don't know if I'm at that point right now. But, you know, I also don't want to put us in an unfavorable position a year down the road, but I'd be curious to see what all those cost benefits would look like. And if you could get the numbers back on how many people actually inquire about renting this space, I think that'd be very beneficial for the council, and also I think for the committee to have that information, to see who's trying to book this venue and what we can do to upgrade it to try and make it more appealing to them so that the cost may not offset their need.
Yes, Councilmember, the other thing to keep in mind is that if we were to do an RFI, that would also include nonprofits, not just private sector. So nonprofits to operate the facility as well. Somebody that could dedicate time and resources to booking the venue.
So we can do an RFI without doing an RFP this evening? Yeah, okay, I'm good with that, so long as the council supports it. I just want to see if I have anything else. Yeah, I don't want to keep belaboring on this point, but Councilmember Contreras brought up the economy and our sales tax, and if anybody wasn't aware, yesterday the Dow dropped by 890 points, and the S&P and NASDAQ both took a pretty good haircut as well. So I would imagine that sales tax revenue is probably going to drop a little bit. I'm not going to say significantly, but it'll either remain flat or dip down. So all of that plays a factor into when you're trying to renovate something and then draw on new business and who's going to actually have the ability to pay for rental fees or to rent out the location. So yeah, I would love to get all that information. And again, I appreciate all the work of the committee. I appreciate all the work of staff, and look forward to the other comments from the council members.
Councilmember Contreras.
Just a question regarding this 25-year-old process of a cost recovery model. Is that across the board, or is that just for the AVO?
Great question. Across the board for the entire department.
So for all the facilities?
Correct.
Okay. I'm really curious to see the formula that gets us to this price. So if that could be made available to the council, that would be great. I need to understand what is going into that formula to get to this cost.
No problem.
And you know, what would it take for us to review the fee schedule? Like, what is it that you would need in order to do that?
So are we talking about like a fee study component, or?
I'm talking about just to lower it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm assuming that the council, if they wanted to, they could just say, we want to lower it to $100, and that would be sufficient, right? I don't want to operate that way. So I just want to know, right, what is this process that we can work on? Because I have been asking for, at this point, I want to say years. I need to get moving on this. I'm here until 2026, so this first show better happen before then.
Councilmember.
So,
Yeah.
Councilmember, if I
Sure.
may, Mike has discussed a fee update with me. It's extremely costly, so we're not recommending it at this time, but we will go down that road. In the meantime, we do an annual update of our fees that follows a CPI, and that's the formula we've been following since its inception. We will bring the formula back from how it was created in the original fee study. It needs to happen. It's just a question of when we want to spend the money. We want to get through the needs analysis first, and then we'll come back and discuss that. In the meantime, I think what I'm hearing is you want to try to help some, I guess, provide opportunity for community members to use the AVO without paying the $1,200 exorbitant fees that we have in place. So it sounds like there's majority support to review the money that we set aside in the year-end fund balance for downtown events. I think that's a good recommendation to send back to the committee with some of that funding, and let Larry talk to them about how they might be able to help figure out programming with some of that funding to make it work in the near term. Then we'll go out for an RFP, RFI, see who's in the business to come operate the AVO, and we can report back to the council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds great. The only issue that I have with it is that I feel like when we wrap the maintenance, and I understand the reason, but when we wrap all the maintenance for the facilities into a cost recovery model, it creates this issue that we have.
I don't think we're talking maintenance. I think we're talking like external services, like IT, for example, provides support for the facilities maintenance out of Public Works. Help, those are the overhead costs that are included in that formula.
So that is the going rate for what our staff makes per hour. So here's my question. Can we have paid internships that are able to take an opportunity to provide the city with the ability to do some of this, understanding that some of the components need to be a professional level? Totally get that. But I'm also curious, we have the chamber with this award-winning internship program that started with seed money from the city. And I'm curious if we could have two different things happen. Have the opportunity for more youth and young adults to have certain types of internships, have a lower cost point that would factor into this formula, which would then potentially reduce the price, and have folks have a great entry into what could be a whole other career. And understanding that we have the moonlight, right? And it could feed into that. I really want us to look at every option available, because I'm not convinced that it actually needs to cost this much money to have a show. I don't agree with the 10-hour booking. Absolutely not. I said that the last time we had this conversation. I think that needs to be broken up too. If I only need to use the AVO for 3 hours, right? 1 hour for setup, 1 hour for my act, 1 hour for cleanup, and I only need it for 3 hours, I don't like that it can't be booked for something else. So I really think that 10 hours is also a huge factor of the cost that is prohibiting folks from utilizing this space.
Councilman, if I could just mention one thing or two things. I think something in like when you do a study, get community input, and hearing this feedback right now, I think if they'd heard it 25 years ago, they would maybe came up with a little plan B, like another model where, yes, it's 10 hours for this big, performance that is going to be booked months and months out. And so maybe that's the policy that says for this 10-hour booking, we know that's going to take place way in advance. But for these smaller, shorter timeframes, maybe it's a shorter time window where you don't have to go into that 10-hour, booking fee. So policies can really help. It's great dialogue to hear this feedback. So I think you're on something on how we could get that. It doesn't always have to be lowering prices, but changing philosophies on how we wouldn't have a cost recovery issue. Because we would be afraid of like a performance that was a 2-week long, run. There was a 1-hour booking in there, but if we knew they only had a few months ahead of time to book that, or whatever it is, just throwing that as an example, that would still kind of accomplish both things. And I did want to throw out, I think something I had forgot to mention, part of the AVO is now part of the Moonlight's IATSE, Unionized Stagehands.
Correct.
So we have to use, the stage techs for anything at the AVO, just as we do at the Moonlight. So just FYI.
Good points, thank you. And I think the dialogue is incredible. And it's over, it's past due for some time. So I do appreciate it. But yeah, I'm trying to pick apart everything that's making this cost too much. And I do think that there's a way for us to still be able to have cost recovery, be able to program this more, and have a lot more economic opportunity for a bunch of folks. The other thing is, so would the booking go through like Vistix, or how does that work right now?
So our Moonlight staff, we have, that's the phone number listed on the website for rentals for both Moonlight and Avo. So they would handle those bookings over there.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm curious if we would need to do like a different type of software that would have like, I don't know, maybe AI in it, who knows? But like a calendar system, right, that is on the public facing side. That way folks that want to book it can, maybe do a preliminary booking, and then maybe they have to go to, the Vistix office to like finish it. But something like that, I think we should see if it's possible. Anything to make it easier for people to see what the real cost of their event would be, because then they could plan for it, right? Again, some of these things sound simple, but I know that they take time, they take money. But I think that we really have a great opportunity, because I think our council is very committed to programming the AVO. So I think that's all from me at this time. Thank you.
About 35 years ago, there was a brand of clothing that young girls were really into. It was called a spree. My sister wanted these purple pants. She wanted them so bad. And she asked for them and asked for them. She finally got them for Christmas one year. I think she was about 10 or 11. And she was so proud of those purple pants. She never wore them, but maybe once or twice, because she was afraid to mess them up. And one day she went to put them on, and they didn't fit. And to this day, my sister is a year and a half older than me. She says, "John, don't purple pants it. The opportunity's in front of you now, and it won't be in the future. You have to take advantage of the opportunities that lie in front of you right now." We're purple pantsing the AVO, okay? The AVO is sitting there laying to waste because we don't want to let go of our precious. $1,200, what are we talking about here? This is nonsense. $1,200, that's not the problem, okay? What's it cost to go to the Belly Up? Costs $44 a person. What does a beer cost? I'm not a big beer guy. I'm more of a spirits guy. What's a beer cost? About $8, $12? Okay, $15, John says. Okay. Average customer is going to drink 2 beers. So 44 plus 30, you're looking at, with 100 tickets sold, you're looking at $10,000 revenue. Now, if you can't get 100 people to come watch your show, maybe your show is just not that good, okay? And I, as a taxpayer, quite frankly, not interested in subsidizing your one-man poetry slam where, 2 people are in the audience. Now, what I would love, and what I think our community would love, is to bring in somebody who wants to make an investment, somebody who would make it a venue like the Belly Up that would be young and vibrant. And what I would like to see is that young people and families come into our downtown and they purchase dinner. And they go to, the sushi restaurant, and they go to, Urban, and they go to Belching Beaver and all of our favorite downtown eateries, and go buy a meal, support, when I got elected 10 years ago, you know what the community really wanted? They wanted a place where they could go sit and order a meal with wait service. And this is in a period of time where, wait serve restaurants are going out of business, and we see all quick serve taking over. So we've done a great job of attracting some of that development, 20 years of forward thinking. But here we are, so sure that we can do something better with it, that we've held on to this thing jealously and don't want it. We should be out looking for somebody to come in who can, if there was a comedy show, I would love to go listen to some live music, have a beer, maybe some popcorn and watch a show, take my wife down there. That would be amazing. And we'd go to dinner and we'd have a date night right here in downtown Vista because we'd like to have a show. A little bit of live entertainment would go a long way. I just don't see that the $1,200, the problem is 385 seats in that theater. If you sold all 385, which, I don't know where we'd park that many cars, and that might be part of the problem, but that's only $3.80 per. So I think the problem is having an operator who has the capital to advertise a show, to attract the right talent. This is something, when we brought the right people in to run the Moonlight, all of a sudden we're adding an extra show. We've got demand that was untold. The right people make the right difference in everything in life. I don't know why we are so afraid to operate our assets to their fullest potential. We're so afraid somebody's going to sit up here on the dais and accuse us of a corporate takeover, because every business entity on earth is run just about by a corporation. I've been in business for 20 years, and first thing I did was went and got me an LLC so that if somebody sued me, wouldn't lose my house. Lots of people like to demonize corporations, the evil corporation and the corporate takeover. Look, the government created a corporate entity to induce small business people. I don't laugh and introduce you while you're speaking. To induce people to go into business. Well, the rest of us are respectful while you speak. I don't know why you're not when others do, but that's okay. But all this, fear-mongering about a corporate takeover, those of us who have employment outside I'm sorry, was I speaking while you're interrupting?
Do you want me to respond? I don't know.
Well, I don't understand.
I don't know when that happened that we talked about a corporate takeover.
I don't understand
here.
why you're disrupting the meeting by speaking out of turn and can't wait to be recognized with, I don't understand why you're disrespectful to your colleagues. I don't know why you do that. We can't have a civil discussion up here if we're all gonna, go laughing and making faces and talking over one another. So I wish you'd conduct yourself as a civil person here. My point is, we shouldn't be so fearful about having an RFP. A request for a proposal is just that, it's a proposal. An RFP does not bind us to accept any proposal, but formally advertising that we'd like to see somebody come in and turn this venue into one that is really an asset for our community, could really create some great stuff downtown that we would all be very proud of. So, the opportunity is within our grasp. We could do it tonight. I think we should instruct staff to devise an RFP, let them know what we'd like. And, I don't know what it should cost to staff the AVO. I've not looked into the matter, but I do know if you're not attracting people to watch your show, then you got a show that's not selling. And if $1,200 is the problem, I think it's probably not a very good show. So, I'm more than happy to let it out at a very reduced price on Saturday and Sunday morning to the Children's Theater or some other, good cause. But I think what people really would like is the community could help us. We're so anti-business and we look down our noses so much at people who develop some expertise at operating a business because, they create jobs for people and, borrow against their homes to invest their livelihood into the community and maybe know something about something. And we take it as some big offense to our staff. It's not anything against the staff, but let me tell you, when you got to make payroll out of your own pocket, you think a little different, okay? When you have to pay people and you go without, you think a little different. Those kind of imperatives develop a lot of ingenuity, and they are trial by fire. I respect our business people, even the ones that have a corporate structure. You know, and I think we should be able to work with those businesses to improve our community and make this into an offering that really is a benefit. And, you know, this attempt to demonize business and corporations and talk about corporate takeovers, I mean, that was a direct quote, if I may. You know, I just don't understand why we don't look into it if we really want to activate this space, and I think we should. Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to look at the multitude of alternatives we have for cost recovery. And it sounds like from the mayor's comments, we might have majority on who's interested in an RFP for the AVO. Not necessarily myself. I do support an RFI. I think similar to our philosophical discussions we've had recently about other public facilities, I want to see us do everything that we can to retain local control of the facilities and to prevent a gamble of a for-profit entity coming in. And, you know, as much as I know that, you know, they might have the capital to do the work faster than government can, there is also the, you know, the profit imperatives that they have that would be prioritized. Not that I don't like to go see a good show, right? When you're involved in the local music scene like I am, you come to appreciate all the different venues. And there's a lot of different venues, right? We have a unique venue here in Vista, and maybe we're not going to be able to stimulate that venue with our own government initiatives. But our public agencies have been involved in the arts for a very long time. And our committee stakeholder members who participated in this, I think, are a great reflection, right, of what happens when we work together. And the committee's recommendations did not include, you know, definitively that we should have an outside operator come in. So I think let's look at all the options. I would say let's get some information to come back. And I really disagree, Mayor, that the issue is not the talent, right? The issue is not, oh, I can't get anybody to come to my show. I think you said it yourself, you know, it's marketing, right? It's opportunity is really the biggest challenge that our local creative community has in being able to be seen. It's having an opportunity to be seen. It's about having a stage to be seen. And our creative community, well, with this council, they have a council that wants them to be seen and not be, you know, behind a paywall, but we want artists to be seen. I think that more art should be free and accessible and available to our community. And I agree with you, Mayor, that we want to get that space stimulated so that our downtown businesses and eateries that we've worked really hard to attract can survive, because they're having a hard time right now. So as we look at alternatives for cost recovery for these fee schedules for the AVO, I just want to say I support an RFI, and I don't think we need to do a fee study at this time. I don't think we do. But I appreciate Councilmember O'Donnell's comments. I would like to evaluate booking history, and I would also like to evaluate the vacancy rate. And considering the vacancy rate, maybe provide some shorter term bookings to fill the gaps. I think that we should be modifying fees based on the demand. If we have a week that doesn't include these 10-hour bookings and these long-standing scheduled reservations, then we have a local art community. We have local bands. They reach out to me and they're like, Katie, where can I play? And if the city staff could help us update these fees and make them accessible, we could get more butts in those seats, honestly. We really could. And if we get more people to our downtown, then we get more folks eating at our local restaurants. We get more eyes on the street. It encourages safety, right, and looking out for one another. There's so many benefits to activating this creative space. But right now, we have a very rigid fee schedule that does not take into account that there are massive vacancies in the middle of the week, throughout the entire year. And we're just, wringing our hands. How do we fix this, Open it up. Drop the fees, reduce the fees. Let artists come in and play, right? Let's be less focused on profits and more focused on how do we actually get art happening in this space. And then maybe we'll see something interesting happen. If it's a major liability for the city, or if it's going to cost, a huge subsidy to the AVO for us to fill the gaps in our bookings by reducing the fees, then please, staff, give us the warnings for that. But I suspect that the gaps in our bookings could be filled with a reduction in our fees, and that local artists, bands would jump at the opportunity. They'd bring their audience and their friends out to come see their shows, because the problem is not talent. We have talent, our local talent. I want to just make sure really clear to the talented people of Vista, I support you. I believe in you. I think that you're talented and your show is worthwhile. And I don't think you've been given the opportunities that you deserve. And since this is a public facility, let's try to make it available to the public. If we can't do it, hey, maybe we get some information from private operators and they're going to do a better job. But I would like to go through, a series of steps before we take this public facility away. So, if that's clear to staff, right? It sounds like, my goal as deputy mayor is always to build consensus. We may have consensus on an RFP. We certainly have consensus on an RFI. Or at least council majority. I wonder if the rest of my council would support evaluating our booking history and vacancy rates and adjusting our fees for those lulls where we just aren't getting people in, and really highlighting the talent that we have in our community and giving people more opportunity. Thanks.
Please hold your applause per our ordinance. Councilmember Contreras, that is, the ordinance has been adopted by this council. Councilmember Contreras, it is now your turn. You're recognized to speak and have the floor. And
Yay, I have the floor.
But ask the members of the council to please be respectful.
I must have struck a nerve, y'all.
And not interrupt.
If you didn't see that,
speaking.
I had a interview on KPBS. It was fantastic. I think that's what the mayor is referring to. At no point in this discussion has anything been said about no corporate takeover, unless I'm mistaken, but I know I'm not. So, highly recommend that you see that interview. It just came out like 5 days ago. Anyways, I was part of the council that allowed for an RFP to move forward. It had, an exclusive where we couldn't get any other proposals. It was extended for 8 months. And it didn't move forward. I am totally okay to have an RFI or an RFP again. However, there is going to be a carve out for public access, 100%. And it's going to have to be substantial, because I know that our youth use it, and I know that we do have talent here in North County. We're not just talking Vista. But in North County, we have a lot of talent. I can't breathe over here or laugh because it causes insecurity with one of the council members here. So it's really interesting behavior. But anyways, so I am fully supportive of that. I do want to look at the booking history. I do want to look at the vacancy rates. I do believe that we can lower the cost and have more activity there. And I really think that we can continue to bring the community in. So that's where I stand. And I hope that we can make something happen. I am not afraid of the public and their input. I'm not afraid of having discussions with my colleagues. And I'm not afraid of investigating how we can make this AVO better. So I appreciate everybody coming forward and all the recommendations and suggestions. I think we're getting there. I think we've already gotten to a point where we have identified what some barriers are. and that we could see this come to fruition and we can start getting some programming in there. You know, if a company thinks that they can come in and do it, so be it. But again, there's going to be a significant carve out for our community. And that's going to have to be built into the process model. And something that hasn't been discussed is that curbside is part of the AVO property. So keep that in mind, right? You have a venue that is well loved, but not utilized after a certain time, next to a venue that is always closed. So we have a lot of things to figure out, and I'm confident that as a community, we can work together and do it. Thank you.
So I would like to offer a motion to direct staff to work with the members of the council to develop an RFP to bring it back to this council for our approval. And I would very much like to include a public access element. I agree. There are programs, ones that serve the interest of educating children and other good messages in our community, just like we have public access television and cable. I think we should also have public access at different times to our public places. But clearly, what we don't want is we don't want to be able to watch the AVO disintegrate. And per Mr. Vappel's description of the interior of the marquee, many years of neglect obviously has taken its toll. So if we don't want to see, the thing fall down on itself eventually, it might not be happening right now. But I, for one, would like to see the LED lights lit up. But we did just have a budget workshop meeting where we reviewed that we need to cut $1.5 million out of next year's budget, and we need to cut $2 million out of the budget the year after that. So the $1.3 million that's been laid before us as an estimate of what it would take, this is not to change anything at the AVO. This is simply to bring all of the systems and structures back up into a state of good repair. Is that correct, Mr. Vappel?
The bottom 4 items on the list are upgrades, I guess you'd call it. But I mean, the seating is dilapidated, so it is kind of maintenance to replace them. But a new sound system, new lighting upgrade, and new video system.
I personally, and I'm not putting any constraints on it, but I personally would like to see somebody figure out how to, in a safe way, level out the floor, maybe with some steps and rails. It's been done in other theaters. To provide areas for tables, because I think if instead of 385 seats, I think if you had 185 seats with tables where people could set a beer down, I think we could sell a lot of our Vista microbrews there. And $15, wow, that's a lot for a beer, but I would pay it to go watch a good show. And I think it would be great. And I think it would probably, we'd have to solve a parking problem really immediately. But I'd like the staff to take all the instruction they've gotten here, and I'd like them, including number 1, that Councilmember Contreras and I are in steadfast agreement, as we so frequently are, about including public access to the theater. And then, we go out and we talk to members of the community that might like to see something great there. I see a member of our community who's invested heavily in arts and entertainment and business venues, took a property that, was falling down and invested some money into. And, I know he's one of those evil corporate business owners, also happens to be a homeowner and a resident long-term here in our community, and is a good man and really cares about our city and has done a lot of good things and built one of the finest establishments in the city, bar none. That's been a real asset. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he's here tonight because he might have an interest. I hope so. Because, when I met him 20 years ago, he wasn't doing development, but he's done some pretty cool development stuff. I'd love to see somebody in our community step forward and do something really cool with this. That would be amazing. So I'm looking for a second to have an RFP where we invite people like our friend who's here tonight to go, you know what? I wasn't going to sit down and think about, talk to my banker, and talk to business partners and investors and decide whether or not I might want to put down some of my money and I'm going to go get a loan against my house or against my other business. But you know what? It's an exciting opportunity. And if the council is serious enough to have a vote to invite a formal proposal, I really think there are some of the members of the council that maybe don't understand exactly what an RFP is and why an RFP would be essential to a business person whose time is worth money, okay, and who is not going to go and talk to their partners and ask people about making investment. They're not going to build a business plan. They're not going to talk to members of the community. They're not going to go out and find other people. But unless they think there's a likelihood that if I were to offer a proposal, the council might take it seriously. An RFP says to a business person, if you propose something along the guidelines and with the community protections and parameters, the recognition that this is a public asset, that the asset needs to be operated for the public good, if we tell them what the parameters are and they think that they can operate within those parameters, and I know it's an evil thing to talk about making a profit. It's a bad, bad thing. Only bad people make profits and employ people and, you know, do things like that, those corporations. But you know what? Profits are how we can afford to put new marquee signs up without having to cut policing in our city, without having to cut fire service in our city, without having to allow our community to deteriorate because we don't have money for the essentials. I mean, I'm really sorry to tell you, but I'm just going to say it right plainly. Building and operating playhouses is not the purpose of municipal government. And I'm very glad that we can do it. And it's what makes a vibrant and wonderful community, but I'll cut it in 2.5 seconds in order to protect the public policing and the fire department, okay? Because we are here to protect public property. We are here to put fires out. We're here to respond with the paramedic ambulance when somebody has a heart attack. Now, once we get doing all those fine things, those essential purposes of government, then and only then will I give even the smallest amount of consideration to any other purpose of government. So, you know, we sit up here facing a budget deficit because of a lot of really bad spending decisions that I'm going to become increasingly acerbic and I'm going to make the public aware of as we face down this deficit. And we sit here and we don't want to talk about the $1.3 million of deferred maintenance. We don't want to talk about a business making a proposal. And we want to sit up here and denigrate business people and laugh instead of maybe actually go out and invite our business community to actually have a proposal. I don't know. I just don't understand, the attitudes and the antipathy towards business people is really shocking. Deputy Mayor Melendez. And if we could, we might even suspend, because we got some, and we could come back to this item and we could talk about it into the wee hours. Yeah, but we've got some good folks that are waiting here, so I know we've all been heard. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would really like to see what would happen if for a year our recreation services is able to modify the fees, and what kind of economic stimulation could occur in our downtown if we can, as I have been calling for, fill the gaps in our scheduled vacancies, these days where we're not getting any participation in the AVO. And I understand there are some needs for technology primarily, right? Rather than aesthetics or the design of the facility itself, that there's some tech that is not adequate for the performances that we want to see. So I value that and I appreciate that. But I would like to see what we can do if for 1 year we modify our fees to allow for a greater open call for artists. It could be a complete disaster, right? Or it could be one of the best things we've ever done to bring people into our downtown and actually create opportunities for local artists. So that's what I would say. And Mayor, the lecturing about the RFP process, I find to be an interesting bit. We do know the history. Councilmember Contreras did support the previous RFP process that came before the council before I was here. And I do understand what the RFP process entails. I think if that's a negotiating tactic for you to lecture the council on our duties and to create fear around our public safety, I don't believe that that's the best way for us to go about this. I want to make it clear to the public. We are not reducing fire and police in order to save the arts. We're not doing that. We are looking at a public facility and we're wondering the best way to go about creating more economic opportunity and opportunity for art in that facility. So I just want to be really clear, we are not discussing cutting fire and police here in this discussion for the AVO. We want to make sure that we're moving forward with the balanced budget. We've gotten some recommendations from staff on how we can fund reducing fees. And I would like to see what would be possible and what would happen if we took a year and maybe we do that simultaneously with an RFP. That's an option. But what would happen just on its own initiative, from what I'm saying, y'all, what would happen if we took 1 year and we filled the gaps and we reduced our fees? Would that transform our downtown into an art and cultural district? I think it would. Thanks.
Councilmember Fox.
Just to clarify on the motion as it stands, it's to put out an RFP. Were there other parts to that?
Definitely to include Councilmember Contreras' call for there to be public access.
Is there a possibility that I could add to that, we would, in the meantime, we would look into potentially half-day rates or something like that while the request for proposal is out there? We figure out a half-day rate for local Vista residents or something like that. That would save a little bit on the fees up front. And then while we're doing that, we can also be looking to see where we would get this funding for. The potential repairs, if the RFP doesn't work out, if they come back and they request that we actually make the renovations and not themselves. In that case, it'd be nice for us to know kind of where the money's coming from, maybe out of year-end balance or something like that. So put out the RFP, have another conversation in November-ish near year-end fund balance talks to see where the funding would come from if we were to do it in-house, if the RFPs are not sufficient. And in the meantime, figure out a half-day rate for local Vista residents or something that would help with costs up until there. Would that be amicable?
To answer your question, if I'm answering your question, is that staff's going to have to bring back a policy change for us to consider. My concern, frankly, is that we would lose money if we have to staff the facility for a period of time. Now, I don't know. I don't think we need to do a fee study. I think we can figure out how many staff it takes to open and close the facility. If one staff member is able to do it, great. I'm more than happy to let people use volunteer labor, but
so I guess maybe we can modify it to just looking into what that if that is something that is feasible to what the half-day rate would be.
We're going to have a council conversation about it. We just had a conversation about using the community room at little or no cost.
Right.
When we start opening up our venues, we get into really slippery territory. We do it for free because, if you do it for one, you're going to have to do it for all, especially if anybody gets into any kind of content that's First Amendment protected whatsoever. For $100, guess what? I'm going to get to hold my church service at the AVO from now on. And ain't nothing you can do about it. And the city's going to have to eat the costs.
Okay.
And you can't come back and say, I can't, because I'll sue you and I will win. So, we have, as a public organization, we have very much have a constitutional law that we have to abide by here. And so again, when the council starts picking and choosing, I want to be very clear.
Right.
If we get into picking and choosing anybody who engages in any constitutionally protected speech, we will lose our ability to regulate and charge for these facilities. So, I don't know who the intended user is that we're discussing here. It's the reason that we have long had a policy which has affected a uniform rate across the board, because that uniformity gives us lawful defensibility. It isn't that every council and every economic development and parks director and city manager and city attorney didn't want to benefit certain individuals over others because they were friends with them or thought their music was better than someone else's.
Yeah.
The reality is we have a legal paradigm that we are bound and obliged to follow where it says, under equal treatment doctrine, if we don't treat one the same as the other, then you go to a judge and you go, they treated this guy different, and guess what? Now we got to treat everybody the same as
I
that.
understand. Yeah, so I think that's.
Very hard.
I'd just like to maybe hear from staff what would be possible without going against any laws like that, to potentially for using that tiered system that we have for a Vista for-profit tier or something like that would maybe have one of those tiers, a nonprofit local Vista nonprofit tier or something that we could look into half-day rates for that wouldn't violate any laws.
Okay, so May 13th is when we're bringing back our policy fees. We'll do a public hearing like we do every year. It's the same time that we always adopt the budget. That way, we have our fees approved at the same time, so we know that's what we budgeted for. And in the policies, we could bring something forward to you at that time that would look at adjusting this policy that is that 10-hour maximum. I'll have to consult with staff to just see what is kind of best practice. Back to your earlier question, how many people were asking for the venue at certain points. Because again, we just want to protect those historic users, that needed to kind of book it in early. And I would hate to take that one reservation that just blocked out, some group. And there could even be a policy where maybe we have a prioritization policy where it's city partnership and then historic users. Again, we can bring this all back to you on that May 13th date. That would help with this particular situation. Wouldn't change any fees, but if there was a group out there that really is knocking on the door and they just want a shorter rental period, we could bring that back at that point.
Right. And I know some venues that do things where if you book it within a certain time frame, so you have to be within the month or something like that, they'll do shorter rates. I know it's where it's sometimes it's within a week so that they know that they don't have any big bookings or something like that. Obviously for some local artists, if they're trying to pack out a crowd, you don't want to have it night before kind of bookings. But if you found a within a certain time so that all the bigger venues or the historic people that we've worked with have an opportunity at least, and they know that it's open, saved until it comes closer to the date or something. So I would like to see. So if I don't know if I have to amend the substitute motion, which is our friendly amendment either way. To put out a request for proposal. Circle back in November to discuss where we would take from year-end fund balance or where we would take the funds to do these repairs if that doesn't work out, and have city look into usage numbers as well as potential options for different rating, lower rate opportunities that would not break any financial laws. With that, okay.
Yes, I will accept that change and appreciate your second.
Perfect. And I would happily second that.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Donnell?
I appreciate all your patience. I think the vote to support this was there about 25 minutes ago. I appreciate the work of my council and the committee. The comment I was going to make is so long as that the space is utilized and it does not prohibit the access to people that are already existing in that space, that are already utilizing it, and it sounds like that is all covered in this motion. So I am happy to support it and see what we can bring back. I look forward to the information you're going to bring back on not just the bookage, but I want to know how many requests have come in for that space. So those are all my comments. Appreciate you.
Councilmember Contreras.
Yes, I think that, Councilmember Fox, thank you so much for being able to put together something that makes sense and that the council probably unanimously feels is a good direction to go in. I really appreciate it.
Well, Councilmember Contreras, I appreciate those positive comments about my motion. I want to just respond to Deputy Mayor with regard to your reference of my tactics being interesting negotiating tactics. I want you to vote for what's in the best interest of your constituents and the people of Vista. Let me be very clear. I don't ever seek to come here and persuade you based on the force of my personal likability to vote for what I want. I hope that if I seem to be sarcastic at times or seem to be unhappy about the way this council is spending the city into deficit, and does not have a way forward identified. And when we talk about coming back for, I mean, quite frankly, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to Councilmember Fox, but we come back in November all we want, but we are out of money. The party is over. We have got to tighten our belt, and this is a wholly discretionary item. We've had this thing shuttered for a long time now, the AVO, and I would love to see it open, but it is going to take a force by private individuals to bring the money, because in this current economic environment, we do not have the funds. And I don't think there's going to be votes ultimately when we get there to fund something like this, which is discretionary. And, we talk about fear tactics. I think Deputy Mayor said I'm using fear tactics, talking about reduction of police and fire. Well, the bottom line is the rubber's going to meet the road somewhere. And somewhere we're going to have to reduce, whether it's in police or fire or it's in paving the roads. But you know something? This city has done an amazing job over the last 20 and really over the last 60 years of managing its finances and operating itself in a first-class manner. We have beautiful roads, we have beautiful parks, and we even have wonderful assets like the Moonlight and the Wave and the AVO Theater. But it only happened because of great fiscal, planning and management. So, no, I'm not going to win Mr. Personality. I'm well aware of that fact. But I don't ask you, based on the degree to which you like me, to vote for common sense. I ask you to vote for common sense in consideration of how much you like the people of the city of Vista. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. That item passes unanimously and without objection from the council. Because we have some good people waiting for item D3, I'd like to bring that item at this time, and then we'll come back to item D2. Seeing no objection, we have Mr. Lung and Mr. Sturman here to introduce our approval of operator services with Urban Street Angels for Transition Age Youth Traditional Housing Program. If there are any members of the public that wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature, by pressing *9, or submitting a request to speak card. Speakers will be called upon. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Our Homeless Services Program Manager, Jonathan Lung, will introduce the item.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor, City Council members. This item recommends an agreement for operator services with Urban Street Angels of a transition-aged youth transitional housing program at a city-owned property. Management Analyst Daniel Sturman will begin the staff presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. City Council has expressed interest in acquiring real property to aid in further implementing the city's strategic plan to address homelessness. The property in question is a 3/4 acre parcel of land that is currently improved with a 12-bed residential care facility. The purpose of the property was agreed upon at $2.1 million, and on October 8th, 2024, the City Council approved a resolution authorizing the purchase of the property and the allocation of $100,000 towards maintenance and rehabilitation costs following the completion of the purchase. Escrow for the property was closed on October 15th, 2024. On December 2nd, 2024, the City of Vista published a request for proposals seeking a provider for the operation of a transition-aged youth transitional housing program. The RFP closed on January 30th, 2025, and the only RFP respondent, Urban Street Angels, provided a thorough response documenting their 13 years of experience providing services to unsheltered TAY and plans for Vista's TAY transitional housing program. The operation of the program will be funded by Urban Street Angels, and the program is planning on accepting TAY individuals beginning July 1st, 2025. Urban Street Angels began by providing outreach services for TAY 13 years ago, and in 2014 opened their first housing program in a private home utilizing private funds. Over a 2-year period, Urban Street Angels supported 25 youth before beginning to receive public funds. In 2016, Urban Street Angels began partnering with a wide variety of public and private organizations to provide tailored interim housing solutions for TAY experiencing homelessness. Some of their partnerships include the County of San Diego Behavioral Health Services, the Regional Task Force on Homelessness, the YMCA, the San Diego Housing Commission, the Lucky Duck Foundation, and the Youth Assistance Coalition. In partnership with these agencies, Urban Street Angels has been able to develop a wide variety of successful interim housing programs designed to support unsheltered TAY struggling with a wide variety of barriers, including mental health diagnoses, substance use disorders, justice involvement, history of being a foster child, and more. The proposed program falls in line with the high standards that the City of Vista has expected from its strategic plan activities. From low client to case manager ratios, who are able to assess clients' needs and refer them to appropriate resources, to semi- and non-congregate room options. Those standards are taken one step further as Urban Street Angels will be able to provide clients with access to up to 20 trade schools with whom they are already partnered, and with scholarship funds to pay for tuition and supplies. Clients will be able to work with a life skills vocational specialist to help them develop basic life skills and explore their interests for future employment. And to highlight the type of respect that they have garnered from the community, Urban Street Angels has received a vehicle donation to transport clients and have also acquired private donations alongside county public funds to get the first year of expenses covered as other funding sources are developed. Next, Homeless Services Program Manager Jonathan Lung will provide a brief overview of the program's proposed operating costs.
The recommended agreement for operator services with Urban Street Angels includes the option to contract for up to 3 years of the initial agreement, and Urban Street Angels has developed a program budget for each of those 3 years. The first year's budget identifies $710,000 in program costs, with increases to $834,000 and $878,000 during the second and third years, respectively. Within those program costs are anticipated facility costs for the lease and maintenance of the city's property, including a progressive lease schedule paid to the city for the building's use. The program anticipates using all secured funding to implement and operate the program during its first year, followed by monthly lease payments during the second and third years of operation, with the city receiving $77,250 in annual lease revenue during year 2 and $79,568 during year 3. Next, Urban Street Angels founder and CEO, Eric Lovett-Mayers, will provide an overview of Urban Street Angels' history and organizational capacity to operate their other existing programs, along with tonight's recommended program.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council, and the team. My name is Eric Lovett-Mayers, and I'm the founder and CEO of Urban Street Angels. And it seems like it's been like 2 to 3 years of really working to get a transitional age youth housing program and support services program in Vista. So I am excited to be here, and thanks for your time of having me. We have some friends and co-workers in the space here with us, Kim and her mom. We also have Chris and Ashley, Z and Shane, and you may be hearing from Z as lived experience, but also with her work at North County Lifeline here in North County. So a lot of great things. We had some with us earlier. They had to step away. As you heard Daniel say, I did find Urban Street Angels in my home in 2012. I am not from Southern California. You probably can't tell, but I am from the South. I moved here in 2012. And because what I experienced as an individual, coming from the South and going through struggles in my own life and being kicked out of my home and everything for actually being gay. I experienced a lot of hardships, made my way through a path all the way to San Diego as pastor of a progressive church in North Park, started Urban Street Angels. It started because I never wanted young people to experience any rejection for whatever it is that they face or whatever they go through. So the goal was to end youth homelessness, and we're making great strides. It started with a few in my home and grew, and now we have 3 locations with close to 140 beds total. We serve about 692 youth actually last year that we took off the street. And Vista will be our North County location, which, if approved, and we're so excited about. You know, not only have we found from our young people of what's needed, of not just wraparound support and housing and supplies and food, that's really giving them a fish that they need, but it's also teaching them how to fish. And so we've had several social enterprise job programs that we've started, like Timmy's Place, which is a pizzeria print shop, funded actually by not just the Lucky Duck Foundation, but the Rolf and Mary Bernershka Foundation. For those of you who are former Chargers fan, you'll know that name. But really a mentorship program also, walking with our youth. When you've been a young person and you've been told you can't or you'll never amount to something, to have somebody just to be a hope for you, to stand alongside you and say, you can do anything you put your mind to. That's what we're seeing happen in success for our youth. We also started a trade school program with the Padres Foundation last year. And we've seen great success with youth getting into the trades, but not just trades that you would think, like welding, electricians, but also EMTs. I saw your firefighters and all up here and what they were talking about. And we've had 5 youth go through the firefighter EMT program in San Diego. So now I'm thinking, let's put them through Vista. Let's get them involved here. So there's so many things. I only shared those things to you because it's exactly what we want to do here in Vista. So let's jump to this program. It reminds me of the first home I rented right after I was no longer the case manager and the janitor and everything else. But we believe in this beautiful piece of property that you purchase. We can house 16 to 18 youth at a time. Yes, we've learned through all these gray hairs, you can tell that we need 24/7 facility oversight. But with that comes support. It's case management, it's housing and job navigation. We have an occupational therapy program that we've worked with our transitional age youth. And of course, the ages from 18 to 25. We have emergency shelter beds in our programs. We have transitional housing beds. We also have long-term supportive housing beds in our program. I think in this facility, we could have a combination of each. A big thing for our program over the last 10 years, I would say, has been connections to healthcare. One of our programs is actually developed for youth who have been against any type of help, and they've used emergency services for their health care, which is an astronomical cost, as you are very well aware. It's like I'm preaching to the choir.